the highway's hunger. Dust motes danced in the lone shaft of moonlight piercing the grimy windshield of the 18-wheeler. For Frank Miller, a man who considered the hum of a diesel engine his most reliable companion, the open road was less a job and more a solitary pilgrimage. It started subtly, as these things always do, like a barely perceptible tremor in the familiar melody of his night drive. Deep in the heart of rural Kansas, the crackle of his CB radio, usually a reassuring backdrop of trucker chatter, began to develop a peculiar habit. Sometimes, instead of the usual static and clipped conversations, it would emit a faint, rhythmic thrumming. It wasn't the sound of interference or the distant drone of other vehicles. It was deeper, resonating in the very cab, a low, constant vibration that seemed to make the fillings in his teeth ache. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, enveloping him. He'd tap the microphone, adjust the squelch, but his readings remained stable, stubbornly refusing to confirm his rationalization. The hum persisted, a constant underlying rhythm beneath the usual highway sounds. Then came the cold spots. Patches of air within the cab that would suddenly drop several degrees, chilling him to the bone, even with the heater blasting. The hairs on his arms would prickle, a sensation that made him glance around nervously. He checked the vents, the windows, all sealed. He blamed localized drafts, a quirk of the truck's aging ventilation system. But an unsettling sense of an unseen presence began to take root, a feeling of being watched, a pervasive, cold gaze emanating from the impenetrable darkness beyond his high beams. The first truly unsettling incident involved his cargo. He was hauling a sealed, non-perishable freight container, a standard load of manufacturing parts. He had meticulously checked the seals at the loading dock. One night, during a routine stop at a desolate rest area in Nebraska, he walked around his rig for a quick inspection. He found it. One of the heavy-duty latches on the cargo container, designed to be tamper-proof, was subtly unlatched. Not fully open, but enough to create a faint, almost imperceptible gap. He swore he'd double-checked them. He dismissed it as a faulty latch, a vibration from the road. But a small seed of unease was planted. He tried to rationalize it. The road playing tricks with his senses, the loneliness of the long haul getting to him. But the feeling of being watched, the persistent chill emanating from the unseen stretches of highway, was harder to dismiss. He'd been driving long haul for 2 decades, crisscrossing North America, a silent guardian of cargo from coast to coast. His mind, honed by countless hours of monotonous highway, focused on the tangible fuel gauges, tire pressure, the relentless march of miles. He found himself unconsciously averting his gaze from particularly dark patches of roadside, as if avoiding an unblinking eye. He started keeping his multi-tool, its blade capable of being locked in place, tucked into the side pocket of his door, its hilt warm against his hand, not for roadside repairs, but for something else, something he couldn't name. One night, around 0300 hours, as he was barreling down a deserted stretch of I-70, he heard it. A faint, almost subliminal whisper. It was too soft to discern words, but it seemed to emanate from the very air around him, a sighing, mournful sound, like wind through dead leaves, but with an underlying cadence that felt strangely human. He froze, listening intently. Nothing. Just the pervasive hum of the engine and the rhythmic slap of his tires on the asphalt. He dismissed it as echoes, a trick of the wind or sheer exhaustion. But his sleep grew restless during his brief rest stops. The anomalies escalated, subtle yet persistent, gnawing at Frank's rigid logical framework. The rhythmic thrum intensified, now occasionally accompanied by a high-pitched whine that made his ears ache, as if something vast and ancient was slowly rousing beneath the asphalt. The cold spots intensified, now accompanied by a faint, cloying sweetness like lilies left too long in stagnant water, a scent that would suddenly fill the cab before dissipating. It was a smell that spoke of decay and something ancient, utterly out of place on the open highway. The whispers grew louder, clearer. They were no longer indistinct murmurs. They were voices, direct, personal, calling out fragmented phrases in what sounded like Old English, sometimes even a strange, guttural dialect he couldn't place, forgotten by time, but the tone was clear, pleading, despairing, sometimes angry, and occasionally a word or two in a chillingly precise, accented tone, cold, below, lost, find us, sleep with us, sleep with us. He believed only in what he could see in his high beams, what he could feel under his tires, what he could taste in the bitter coffee from truck stops. The highway, to him, was a predictable beast, its secrets locked in asphalt and worn white lines. He was wrong. He heard a child's soft sob, a woman's desperate plea, a man's guttural gasp, always seeming to emanate from the road itself, echoing through the empty fields, seeping through the floor of his truck. He'd gripped the steering wheel tighter, straining his ears, but they would always fade, replaced by the omnipresent hum of the engine. He started seeing fleeting shadow figures in the corners of his vision, coalescing for a split second into familiar forms. A small, thin child at the edge of the roadside, a grieving woman in tattered clothes, an old man with hollow eyes, their forms flickering in the periphery of his high beams, before dissolving back into the darkness. His own reflection in the rearview mirror seemed to distort, his features twisting into a fleeting grimace, a look of utter despair before normalizing. It was preying on his mind, twisting his thoughts, trying to isolate him further. He developed a slight tremor in his hands, barely noticeable but present. He stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping soundly. His logical mind, his anchor, was slipping. He found himself muttering arguments against an unseen presence, then immediately regretting it, retreating further into himself. The dispatch team noticed his increased fatigue, his clipped responses. They attributed it to the demanding schedule, offered sympathetic advice to take more breaks. No one would believe him. He was truly alone. The entity, whatever it was, knew. It was nurturing his despair, cultivating his isolation. Frank began to research the stretches of highway he traversed. He dug through old local news archives, forgotten historical records. The stretch of road through rural Kansas and Nebraska in particular had a dark past. It had once been a major wagon trail, a route fraught with peril during the Westwood expansion. Native American massacres, settler disappearances, violent bandit attacks, and more recently, a chilling number of unsolved disappearances of travelers and even other truckers along desolate sections. Local legends spoke of the Collector, a malevolent force that haunted these roads, drawing unsuspecting travelers into an eternal, unyielding hunger. A chill ran down Frank's spine, the children's sobs, the women's pleas, the cold spots, the scent of lilies in decay, the hum. His current route took him through the sprawling, sometimes desolate stretches of the American Midwest, heading from a manufacturing plant in Indiana to a distribution center in Colorado. It was all converging. He looked at the endless ribbon of blacktop stretching into the darkness, knowing that beneath its surface, something was waiting. He felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to understand, to push through the fear, to confront whatever lay beneath, to force it to reveal itself. He felt a desperate need to understand. One particularly desolate night, deep in a rural stretch of Nebraska, the hum from the CB radio intensified to a deafening roar, vibrating through the entire truck, rattling the dashboard. The dashboard lights flickered erratically, then died. His headlights dimmed, then brightened, pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. The air grew thick with the cloying sweetness. The scent of lilies and damp earth intensified, almost suffocating. The whispers in the cab became a cacophony, a swirling vortex of voices, all of them his, all his anxieties, all his doubts, all the faces he'd lost. And then, from the depths of the hum, a clear, distinct sound, a child's laugh, playful, innocent, yet utterly chilling, followed by that guttural chuckle, now louder, more confident. He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, his heart hammering against his ribs. He felt the cold spots swirling around him, coalescing, forming indistinct shapes that pressed in on him from every side. And then, slowly, deliberately, he saw it. The road ahead of him, the asphalt, began to ripple and distort. Not a mirage from heat, but a shifting, undulating surface like dark water. The white lines on the highway seemed to stretch, to warp, becoming jagged, impossibly long teeth. The solid earth itself seemed to be opening, forming a vast, dark maw that swallowed the light from his struggling headlights. A faint, unearthly blue light began to emanate from the depths of this opening, illuminating the chasm in an ethereal glow. Frank gasped, his breath catching in his throat, but his eyes were drawn, transfixed to the abyss. The maw was not empty. Instead, within its depths, a scene was unfolding, not a void, but a glimpse into something else. He saw vast, impossibly deep caverns, stretching into an endless abyss, filled with a shimmering, viscous liquid that pulsed with the same blue light. And within this liquid, hundreds, thousands, millions of faint, ethereal forms drifted silently. They were transparent, barely visible but unmistakable. Men, women, children, their outlines wavering like smoke. Travelers, truckers, settlers, all lost, all suspended. They floated aimlessly, their faces blank, their eyes like twin voids. Local legends, whispered among the late-night truckers, spoke of certain stretches of road, particularly in the older, less traveled routes that snaked through forgotten towns as hungry highways. And then, in the very center of the vast, pulsating ocean of souls, bathed in the unearthly blue light, a shimmering distortion, like heat haze, forming a vague, bipedal figure, impossibly tall, impossibly thin, its limbs too long, its head too small. Its skin seemed to ripple, like water under moonlight, and its face, it was a shifting mosaic of shadows and light, features coalescing and dissolving, but he saw the eyes. Not eyes, but two swirling vortices of darkest black, reflecting the dim glow of the scene with an unnatural, hungry gleam. This was the collector, not a ghost, but something far more ancient, something that fed on the echoes of pain, on fear, on the fractured souls of the lost. It was the collective anguish of all those lost souls, trapped and assimilated, forming a singular, hungry entity. The creature reached out, its impossibly long, slender fingers hovering over one of the ethereal figures of a small child, drifting nearby. It didn't touch. It merely beckoned. The voices in Frank's mind coalesced. A chorus now, 1,000 alien thoughts, 1,000,000 human fears, all merging, all vying for dominance. They wanted to rest. We offered peace, understanding, freedom. Join us, Frank. Rest forever. He watched in horror as the creature in the abyss seemed to inhale, a subtle, sucking motion. The ethereal figure of the child wavered, its outline shimmering before it slowly, inexorably began to drift towards the creature, its form becoming translucent, merging with the swirling darkness of the void where its mouth should be. It didn't struggle. It simply dissolved, a look of placid resignation on its face. Then another figure, an old woman, then a man, all drawn into the shimmering void. The highway was a silent maw, consuming them. The blue light from the creature pulsed, then intensified, becoming a blinding, invasive blue that seemed to burrow into Frank's very being. He felt cold, so cold. And then a tearing sensation, not physical but profound, as if something was being gently, meticulously peeled from his core. He heard his own scream, distant, muffled, then fading into the terrifying alien hum. With a desperate primal surge, Frank slammed his foot on the accelerator. The old truck roared, its tires struggling for purchase on the shifting asphalt. They warned of phantom hitchhikers, shifting landscapes, and the unsettling feeling of being watched by something that lurked just beyond the reach of their headlights. He didn't know how, but the truck surged forward, lurching past the edge of the opening maw, veering wildly onto the grassy shoulder. He heard a sickening thump as something massive seemed to close behind him, a sound of colossal rock grinding against rock. The blue light vanished. The road ahead was solid once more, dark and still. He sped away, leaving only the sound of his shuddering engine in the wake of the highway's silence. He drove for hours, not knowing where he was going, just needing to be as far as possible from that stretch of road. He stopped at the first brightly lit truck stop he found, a garish oasis in the pre-dawn gloom. He stumbled out of his rig, shaking, his body aching, his mind a shattered mess. The dispatch team called, concerned about his unusual delay. He mumbled something about a flat tire, a bad batch of fuel. They bought it. He completed his delivery somehow. He drove back east, avoiding every stretch of road that even remotely resembled the Nebraska highway. He quit his job shortly after, citing stress-induced health concerns. He sold his truck, refusing to sit behind the wheel of another one. He lives in a small apartment now, in a bustling city, far from any highways, far from any profound silence. He avoids long drives. He avoids desolate places. He avoids silence. He leaves the television on, always, a low hum of white noise to drown out the others. He checks his reflection endlessly, scrutinizing his own face, half expecting it to distort, to show the void. He refuses to acknowledge any sound that resembles a hum or a whisper. He tells himself it was sleep deprivation, hallucinations, the sheer exhaustion of the long haul, the burden of a solitary life, the stress of modern life finally catching up to him. He repeats it like a mantra, a fragile shield against the terrifying truth. He clings to logic, to reason. But the shield is riddled with holes. From that day, he still remains thinking about it. He feels the faint, inexplicable cold spots even in the warmth of summer. He sometimes catches the cloying, sweet scent of lilies and damp earth on a breeze or in the stillness of the night. He hears faint whispers, just on the edge of hearing, calling his name, promising him oblivion, echoing the ancient voices, the cries of the lost. He scrutinizes the faces of strangers, the expressions of friends, looking for that subtle distortion, that unnatural stillness in their eyes, that hint of ancient knowledge. He knows it's still there, beneath the endless blacktop. In the heart of the highway, slumbering, waiting. Frank, pragmatic as ever, dismissed them as quaint superstitions, the poetic fears of an overtired mind fueled by too much caffeine. He was there to deliver his load, on time, not for ghost stories. His life on the road was solitary, and he knows, with a horrifying certainty, that it carried a piece of him with it, a resonance that was forever altered, forever open to its cold, unblinking gaze. He escaped the highway, but he did not escape the entity. He is safe for now, but he is not whole. He is forever haunted by the chilling knowledge that beneath the familiar veneer of our world, ancient, hungry things lie dormant or perhaps actively pursue, waiting for the curious, waiting for the isolated, waiting for the fear, forever ensuring that some absences, once experienced, can never truly be filled. And he will always wonder what stories it now whispers from the asphalt, what souls it now assimilates, and if, one day, the highway will truly awaken and its vast, hungry maw will open once more, inviting him to join the forgotten in their endless silent rest. His only regular contact was with the dispatch team and the occasional gruff exchange at a loading dock. He liked it that way, Fewer distractions, more peace, and the steady rhythm of the journey. He had no one waiting for him at home, just a small apartment in Ohio filled with the echoes of a life once shared, now gone. The road was his escape, his sanctuary. The first hint of something amiss wasn't a grand, terrifying spectacle, but a subtle shift in the everyday. It began with the radio. Thanks for watching. The veil between our world and theirs is thinner than you think. Each like, each share, each subscription strengthens the connection. Feed the channel before it feeds on you.